this was, our lead structure of the team as a plan, build, run. So PMO, a business analyst doing the business requirements gathering. Build was my responsibility. So those were the big project work. And then run is kind of the day-to-day administration and kind of keeping the lights on, minor enhancements, things like that. My team would do both technical development, but also if there was a administrative component of configuration, we might partner with an admin to do that.
Nice, very cool. One of the questions I have for you, and this is actually a good segue into that, is can you you've had a lot of experiences, a lot of different teams. You also build a lot of different teams with LinkedIn, Dropbox, Stripe. You could go across this if you need to pull experiences. But what is is that the typical anatomy of a internal business systems and tools team? Or if it's not, what is typical anatomy? And can you give us a little bit of a breakdown?
Yeah. So those functions are the three behaviors that you see across the board. Right? Alex, who was my manager at Dropbox, said way back in the day, and of course I was like, oh, Alex, it's people, process, technology. And that is true always. So do you have the partner? Does the partner know how their process is articulated? Do you understand how to reinforce and support or automate or speed up or whatever you're trying to achieve that process with technology? And so the way that, and then there's the kind of iterative, like continuing to keep that alive and continuing to improve it. So if you think about, and I think about the world in that framing all of the time now, that's how we approach it. And so our team is staffed for each of those areas. The plan side is always about, let's sit down with the people we're partnering with and let's understand their process. Now that team on my team is responsible for really understanding the business partner's process and then starting to think about who do we need to engage with from the technology side to support that process. Then the build side is the actual team that's saying, okay, now I've got the process. How do we empower this with the tools we have, or what tools do we need to go buy? So those functions and run, of course, being the day-to-day maintenance, those functions always exist. They are not always carved out as specific teams because depending on size, you just don't have the resources. When I joined LinkedIn, we were all, each one of us was a little mini plan, build, run. There were only 7 of us and we were supporting a lot. And so we would go sit down and get the requirements and then we would go off and build something and then we would be the one who kept it alive. And then eventually when you got like a little bit burned out on that area, you'd switch it to one of your other team members. So I ended up with sales development work because April was done thinking about that problem statement and then we would kind of cycle through. But those kind of pillars exist. They just evolve, and how you structure the team varies quite a bit. There is not a perfect way to do that. I think it depends a lot about where the organization is, what they're valuing at the time, and then who do you have on staff. But the core behaviors have remained the same across LinkedIn, Dropbox, and Stripe.
Can you explain what the end result looks like? Like, what does euphoria look like when you get to this place where, maybe not euphoria, you get what I'm saying though, yeah. Where you get to this place where you're being proactive, you're working with the business on the things you should be working on, and it is working like a smooth machine that is operating on all cylinders. Like, what does that look like, and what are you guys accomplishing when that happens?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start with what it doesn't look like.
That's good.
There's no world in which we're done, and there's no world in which there's no backlog, and there's actually no world in which we are doing everything the business wants, all 10 items every sprint. That has never happened in the course of my career, regardless of the team size or anything like that. There will always be needs. There will always be needs that we can't serve immediately today, and part of that is actually the right investment model for the business overall.
Right.
So we're always looking at prioritization. I think when it's running smoothly, the factors that I look at are we have transparent and clear communication with our partners. They know what they're getting, and we're delivering that in the way that we've committed to delivery. They are actively engaged and partnering and feel good about the prioritization. They know why. They know the business impact, partially because they're defining it. But there's a lot of really clear communication there. And then on our side, like I said, we're delivering on time. We're delivering in a way that is thoughtful and accountable to the rest of the ecosystem. So we're not breaking each other, and we're not breaking the system. That actually gets quite difficult at scale. If you have 5 developers on a platform, and sometimes they have overlap, you have to make sure that they're all developing the product that is your CRM or the product that is your marketing automation platform in a way that is conscientious. So we are, when we're operating smoothly, we are not blowing up each other's work, which is not but but that's a pretty obvious one in my mind. I think when we're operating smoothly, we are responding to the right things with the right urgency and the right SLAs. So this is one of the reasons that we end up with a run function. Is not every ask has to be treated like a project,
right?
But not every ask has to be treated, but can be treated like a quick win. Right. So you want to have, varying SLAs and varying approaches. And when we're running smoothly, we have an intake process that allows us to triage those and be very quickly responsive where it's appropriate, and be thoughtful and measured in our approach where that's appropriate, but not trying to do a one size fits all. Those are kind of the core tenets that I look to when I think about how my team is running smoothly. I think maybe the one that we don't talk about with the business as much is we also spend some time thinking about the technical foundations and how those potentially need to evolve, because our SaaS partners are evolving different features and giving us different capabilities. So maybe we set up an integration one way 4 years ago because that was what Zendesk allowed us to do. And that maybe is really difficult for us to maintain and manage. And on the business side, it may look like it just works. And on our side, it may be a ton of toil and work to keep it alive. And Zendesk releases a new feature that simplifies that. How do we also continuously bring technical underlying improvements, infrastructure improvements into our roadmap? And then when we're working really well, socializing those up with our partners so they really appreciate why us doing that work actually improves their world and makes us more efficient together. Those are kind of the high level things that I look for when I think about my team operating well. And like I said, the work will never stop. It will always be there, which is the exciting and fun part. So really it's about transparency and process and prioritization.